Commander Vexville stretched his forearms and yawned, showing rows of sharp teeth. The monitoring station orbiting the edge of the Sol system was the most boring assignment in the Krillian Empire. He had been stuck here for 30 years, watching primitive humans crawl away from their dying planet like insects fleeing a flood. His console beeped softly. Another ship was leaving Earth's orbit, its crude fusion drive painting a bright trail across his sensors. Vexville's secondary eyes focused on the readings while his primary eyes continued scanning other data streams. "Sir, the humans are launching." "Another one," said his aide Kexman, his mandibles clicking with barely contained laughter. "This one's bigger than the last. They're calling it the New Dawn." Vexville finally looked up from his reports. The human vessel looked like a massive metal tube with engines strapped to one end. Its hull was pitted and scarred even before leaving orbit, patched together from whatever materials the humans could salvage. Thick armor plating covered critical systems, but Vexville could see the stress fractures already forming along the welds. "Pathetic," he muttered, recording the ship's specifications. "Look at that reactor signature. It's barely maintaining stable fusion. They'll be lucky if it doesn't explode before they reach the asteroid belt." Kexman pulled up the ship's trajectory on the main display. A dotted line stretched from Earth toward the Kepler star systems, 47 light-years away, same route as the others. "Commander, do you think this one will actually make it?" Vexville laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "The last 3 ships we tracked went silent after 15 years. Reactor failures, life support breakdowns, or simple structural collapse. These humans build everything like it's held together with prayer and desperation." He had watched dozens of these generation ships lumber away from Earth over the past 3 decades. Each one carried thousands of humans fleeing their planet's environmental collapse. Their world was dying, choked by pollution and climate disasters, and these ships represented their last hope for survival. The Krillian Empire had seen this pattern before. When a species faced extinction, they always tried to spread to other worlds. It never worked. The journey between stars was too long, too dangerous, too expensive for primitive civilizations to manage successfully. "Update the file," Vex ordered. "Human Exodus ship number 57. Estimated crew 15,000. Destination Kepler 4 for to be. Predicted survival probability less than 12%. Kexman's claws clicked across his console. "Should we inform High Command about the increasing launch frequency? They've sent 8 ships in the past 2 years. Why bother?" Vexville waved a dismissive hand. "Even if some of them survive the journey, what threat could they pose? Their weapons are chemical explosives and crude projectiles. Their shields are barely adequate against cosmic radiation. When the Empire decides to expand into their systems, we'll sweep them aside like dust." The Krillian Empire controlled 17 star systems and had destroyed 23 emerging species in the past 1,000 years. Each time, the pattern was the same. A primitive species would develop spaceflight, attempt to colonize nearby systems, and then encounter Krillian expansion fleets. The battles were always brief and one dash-sided dot. Meanwhile, aboard the U.S. New Dawn, Captain Kim Taeho stood silently on the bridge watching Earth disappear behind them. The blue marble that had been humanity's home for millions of years was now just another point of light in the darkness. His weathered hands gripped the command rail tighter than necessary, knuckles white with tension. "Captain," Engineer Park Ji-min called from her station. "Fusion reactor is running at 93% efficiency. All systems nominal, atmospheric processes, online and cycling properly. We're maintaining Earth normal conditions throughout. All habitat sections." Taeho nodded but didn't relax. They had trained for this moment for 15 years, but theory was different from reality. Now they were truly alone in the void, carrying 15,000 souls toward an uncertain future. "Navigation. Confirm our heading," he ordered. "Navigator." Lee Soo-young checked her instruments. "Course locked for Kepler 442. Estimated journey time 58 years at current velocity." 58 years. Most of the adults aboard would never see their destination. The children would grow up in the metal corridors of the ship, and their children would be the ones to set foot on humanity's new world. "Sir," Communications Officer Yu Min-yong spoke up, "we're receiving final transmissions from Earth. Messages. From families, government officials, and the other colony ships." "Put them through to the general comm system," Taeho said. "Everyone deserves to hear the last words from home." The bridge fell silent as voices from Earth filled the speakers. Parents saying goodbye to children they would never see again. Scientists sharing final research data. Politicians making empty promises about Earth's recovery that everyone knew were lies. In the cargo bays below, 15,000 humans tried to process the reality of their situation. They had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might never reach their destination. But staying on Earth meant certain death within a generation. Dr. Kim Yunasia, the ship's chief medical officer, walked through the habitat sections checking on families. Children pressed their faces against the viewports, watching Earth shrink away. Many were crying, but some seemed excited about the adventure ahead. Dr. called Park Junho, a hydroponics engineer. My daughter is asking when we'll see land. Again, what should I tell her? Dr. Kim knelt beside the 7-year-old girl. We're going to build a new home among the stars. It will take a long time, but when we get there, you'll help plant the first gardens on our new world. The little girl smiled and pressed her hand against the viewport. Somewhere out there, in the darkness between stars, lay humanity's future. On the Krillian monitoring station, Commander Vexvel filed his daily report and settled in for another shift of watching. Primitive species struggle against the inevitable. He had no idea that aboard that crude human vessel, 15,000 people were preparing to prove him very, very wrong. The New Dawn's engines burned bright against the cosmic darkness, carrying humanity's hope toward the stars, while alien eyes watched with contempt and calculated their chances of survival at nearly zero. They would learn soon enough how dangerous it was to underestimate the human spirit. The warning klaxon screamed through the corridors of the U.S. New Dawn as Captain Lee Dongyin rushed to the bridge. 57 years had passed since his grandfather Kim Tae-ho had first taken this ship away from Earth. Now, as they finally approached their destination, the moment everyone had prepared for was here. Captain on the bridge, Navigator Os, called out as Lee Donghae stepped through the blast doors. Unlike his grandfather, who had been an old man when the journey began, Lee Donghae was only he had been born in the void between stars, raised on recycled air and artificial gravity, trained his entire life for this single moment. The main view screen showed the Kepler 442 system spread out before them. 3 rocky planets orbited the orange star, and the second one showed promising signs of atmosphere and water. But between the human fleet and their new home, space itself seemed to ripple and tear. Contact emerging from hyperspace. Tactical Officer Yu Jinwoo shouted from his station. Multiple vessels, configuration unknown. The space distortions collapsed, revealing 12 sleek alien warships. They were beautiful in a deadly way, with curved hulls that seemed to flow like liquid metal. Energy coursed along their surfaces, in patterns that hurt to look at directly. These were the ships of a species that had mastered technology humanity could barely comprehend. They're scanning us, reported Communications Officer Park Min. Multiple active sensor sweeps. Wait, incoming transmission on standard frequencies. The bridge fell silent as an alien voice filled the air. It spoke in perfect, emotionless English. Primitive vessels of the species designated human. You have entered territory claimed by the Krillian Empire. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to comply. Lee Donghan felt ice in his veins, but his voice remained steady. Jinwoo, what's our tactical situation? Tactical Officer Yu Jinwoo's fingers danced across his console. 12 enemy vessels, estimated length 400 meters each. They're armed with directed energy weapons and some kind of particle beam system. Our sensors can't penetrate their hulls, but they're definitely military class. Our weapons status, all railgun batteries charged and ready. Fusion torpedoes loaded in tubes 1 through 8. Point defense grid is online. Ship's structure has been reinforced for combat operations. Unlike their grandfathers who had fled Earth with jury-rigged equipment, this generation had been born for war. The New Dawn had been rebuilt during the journey, transformed from a desperate refugee vessel into something far more dangerous. The ship's hull bristled with magnetic accelerator cannons, each capable of firing tungsten slugs at 20% the speed of light. Sir, Engineer Park Soyoung called from her station, I can give you 115% reactor output for combat operations. We've got enough fusion fuel for a sustained engagement. Lee Donghan looked around his bridge crew. Every face was young, determined, and unafraid. These people had never seen Earth, never breathed natural air or felt real sunlight. The stars were their home, and they would not be driven from them by anyone. Open a channel to all ships in our fleet, he ordered. Channel open, sir. This is Captain Lee Donghae to all vessels. We've traveled 57 years to reach this moment. Our grandparents fled a dying world so we could build a new one. Today we make our stand. All ships, battle stations. The response came immediately from 6 other colony ships. Captain Choi Hai-1 of the UES Defiance, Captain Park Jr., CEO of the EU's Resilience, and for others, each ship carried thousands of colonists and enough firepower to level a city. Commander Vexfel stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Kethmoran, watching the human vessels with growing confusion. These ships looked nothing like the primitive cylinders he had tracked leaving Earth decades ago. Their hulls were sleek and angular, covered in weapon ports and sensor arrays. They moved with purpose and precision. "Sir, the humans are not responding to our demands," his aide, Kexman, reported nervously. "Then we'll demonstrate Krillian superiority." Vexwell snarled, "Target the lead vessel. Full power plasma barrage." The Kethmoran's main weapon charged with a sound like rising thunder. Energy cascaded along the ship's hull as the plasma cannon prepared to fire. This weapon had shattered the defenses of a dozen worlds, but Tactical Officer Yu Jinwoo had been watching, calculating, predicting. As the alien weapon reached full charge, he triggered the New Dawn's maneuvering thrusters. The massive ship twisted aside just as the plasma beam lanced through space, missing by mere meters. "Return fire," Lee Donghayan commanded. The New Dawn's response was instant and devastating. 8 railgun batteries fired simultaneously, hurling tungsten slugs across the void at relativistic speeds. The first Krillian ship's shields flared bright blue, then collapsed entirely. The second volley punched through the alien hull like it was made of paper. The Kethmoran shuddered as pieces of destroyed ship bounced off its shields. Commander Vexfel stared in disbelief as one of his vessels broke apart, atmosphere and crew venting into space. "Impossible," he roared. "They're primitives. How can they have weapons that penetrate our shields?" But the humans weren't finished. Engineer Park Soyoung pushed the New Dawn's reactor beyond safe limits, channeling raw fusion energy directly into the weapon systems. The ship's hull began to glow white-hot from the excess heat, but the weapons charged faster than ever before, firing fusion torpedoes. Jinwoo announced. 4 missiles streaked toward the alien fleet, each one carrying a miniature star in its warhead. The Krillians tried to intercept them with point defense systems, but the torpedoes were too fast, too maneuverable. They struck 2 ships simultaneously, and for a brief moment, twin suns bloomed in the darkness of space. Across the human fleet, similar scenes played out. Captain Choi Hai, one of the Defiants, used her ship's experimental particle beam to slice a Krillian cruiser in half. Captain Park Jun-co rammed his ship directly into an alien vessel, both ships exploding in a ball of fire that lit up the entire system. In 15 minutes of brutal combat, the mighty Krillian interceptor fleet was reduced to scattered debris and fleeing survivors. Commander Vexfel's flagship limped away with half its hull missing, its engines barely functional. "All ships, retreat," he transmitted desperately. "Fall back to the home systems. Send word to High Command immediately." As the surviving alien vessels disappeared into hyperspace, Captain Lee Donghayan opened a channel that broadcasts across all frequencies, ensuring that every species in the galaxy would hear his words. "This is Captain Lee Donghayan of the United Earth ship New Dawn, speaking for all of humanity. We came here seeking a new home. We found a fight instead. To any who would challenge us, know this: we are not the frightened refugees who left Earth 57 years ago. We are something new, something you've never faced before. We are humanity, and we're not going anywhere." The message echoed across the stars, carried by quantum transmitters to every corner of the galaxy. The age of human expansion had begun, and it would be written in fire and steel among the stars. Admiral Zethkar stood in the command center of the Krillian flagship Doombringer, his 6 arms crossed behind his back as he studied the holographic display. Battlefleet Zerian stretched out before him in perfect formation, 200 of the most advanced warships the Empire had ever built. Each vessel was a masterpiece of destruction, capable of glassing an entire planet. "Admiral," his communications officer hissed through sharp teeth, "we're receiving the final transmission from Commander Vexfel's monitoring station." The message played across the bridge speakers, filled with static and panic. "High Command, the humans are not what we believed. They have weapons that penetrate our shields. Our entire interceptor fleet has been destroyed. Request immediate reinforcement." The transmission cut to static. Zethkar's primary eyes blazed with fury, while his secondary eyes continued monitoring fleet formations. No primitive species had ever destroyed a Krillian fleet. It was impossible, unthinkable. "Increase speed to maximum," he commanded. "We will reach the Kepler system in 6 hours. Prepare all weapon systems for planetary bombardment. When we finish with these humans, there won't be enough left to fill a cargo container." But as Battlefleet Zerian dropped out of hyperspace, At the edge of the Kepler 442 system, the long-range sensors detected something that made every Krillian on the bridge freeze in terror. "Sir," the sensor operator whispered, his voice shaking, "I'm reading multiple human fleets, not just the colony ships we expected. There are dozens of them, spread throughout the system." Admiral Zethkar pushed the operator aside and stared at the tactical display himself. What he saw defied everything the Empire knew about human capabilities. The system wasn't just occupied, it was fortified. Massive space stations orbited the second planet, bristling with weapons. Asteroid mining operations had been converted into defensive platforms. And everywhere, human ships moved in coordinated patterns. "Impossible," he breathed. The reports said they sent desperate refugees in barely functional ships. His tactical officer, Commander Vextor, studied the readings with growing dread. "Sir, I'm counting at least 40 major vessels and hundreds of smaller craft. These aren't the same ships that left Earth. They're completely different designs." On the bridge of the UES Indomitable, Admiral Choi Minho watched the alien fleet materialize on his screens. At 62 years old, he was one of the few humans who remembered Earth, having been a child when the Exodus began. Now he commanded the largest human fleet ever assembled. "Communications, open channels to all fleet commanders," he ordered. Calmly, the main screen split into multiple windows, showing the faces of his fellow commanders. Captain Kong Haijin of the UES Defiance looked eager for battle, her ship's crew having been born and raised for warfare. Captain Park Junaseo of the U's Resilience nodded grimly from his bridge, while Captain Lee Soyoung of the UES Thunder checked her weapon reader. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Choi Minho said quietly, "the aliens expected to find frightened refugees hiding on a single world. Instead, they've found something they never anticipated: an invasion force." The truth was stunning in its simplicity. Earth hadn't just sent one generation ship or even a dozen. Over the course of 30 years, they had launched nearly 100 colony vessels, each carrying tens of thousands of people and everything needed to build a new civilization. But these weren't the crude ships that had originally left Earth. During the long journey between stars, the human fleets had remained in constant contact through quantum communication arrays. Every technological breakthrough, every innovation, every hard-learned lesson was shared instantly across the entire human diaspora. Ships that had left Earth as barely functional cylinders had been completely rebuilt during their journey. Engineer Lim Soo-jin aboard the Indomitable represented this new generation of human ingenuity. During the 57-year journey, she had perfected shield harmonics that could deflect energy weapons by rotating frequencies faster than alien targeting systems could compensate. Her shields didn't just block attacks, they absorbed energy and redirected it back at attackers. "Admiral," she reported from her station, "all ships are showing full shield harmonics. The aliens' plasma weapons will be completely useless against us." Weapons Officer Bei Yujin had spent decades developing fusion warheads that could adapt their yield based on target analysis. His torpedoes could penetrate any known armor by reshaping their fusion reaction at the moment of impact. "Sir, all weapons are loaded and ready. We've got enough firepower to take on 10 times their number." Medical Officer Kim Yoon-bai had created combat stimulants that enhanced human reaction time and endurance far beyond normal limits. All crews have been administered combat enhancement drugs. They can fight at peak efficiency for 18 hours without rest. Admiral Zethkar watched his sensors in growing panic as the human formations moved to surround his fleet. These weren't the desperate tactics of refugees, this was a carefully planned military operation executed with precision that matched the Empire's own forces. "All ships, attack formation," he commanded. "Target their command vessel first." But as his fleet moved to engage, something unprecedented happened. 3 Krillian vessels broke formation and transmitted surrender codes. "Admiral," his communications officer reported in shock, "the crews of the Skelter, Vexma and Kethelin are refusing to engage. They're requesting permission to withdraw from combat." "Cowards," Zethkar roared. "Open fire on the surrendering vessels." But before he could give the order, the human fleet struck. Unlike the chaotic engagement at their first contact, this was a masterpiece of coordinated warfare. Human ships moved in perfect synchronization, each vessel supporting the others in patterns that seemed almost like a deadly dance. Captain Kong Haijin led her squadron in a pincer movement that trapped 12 Krillian cruisers between overlapping fields of fire. Her ships didn't just attack, they anticipated enemy movements and positioned themselves exactly where fleeing vessels would emerge. Captain Park Junesio commanded the heavy assault ships that punched through the center of the alien formation. His vessels absorbed massive amounts of fire without slowing down, their adaptive shields growing stronger with each hit. Captain Lee Soyoung's fast attack craft swarmed through the battle like angry hornets, striking at vulnerable points and disappearing before return fire could find them. Her pilots fought with the instincts of people who had never known any home except the void between stars. Admiral Zethkar watched in horror as his mighty fleet was torn apart by tactics he couldn't understand. Human ships fought as individuals, while somehow coordinating perfectly as a group. They adapted to his strategies faster than he could implement them. Every formation he tried was countered before it could take effect. "Sir, we've lost 60 ships in the first hour," Commander Vextal reported, his voice cracking with panic. "Their weapons are penetrating our armor like it doesn't exist." "How is this possible?" Zethkar demanded. "They're supposed to be primitives." The answer came from his own tactical computers as they analyzed human combat patterns. These weren't the descendants of Earth's refugees. This was something entirely new, a species that had spent 60 years traveling between stars, sharing knowledge, adapting, evolving. They had transformed themselves into the perfect spacefaring civilization. "All ships, retreat." Admiral Zethkar finally transmitted as his flagship shuddered under human fire. "Fall back to the home systems. Prepare planetary defenses." But, even as his surviving vessels fled toward hyperspace, he knew it was too late. The humans weren't just defending their new home, they were expanding outward, claiming system after system. Each victory brought them new resources, new technology, new allies from species the Empire had oppressed. As the last Krillian ships disappeared into hyperspace, Admiral Choi Minho opened a channel that broadcast across the entire galaxy. "This is Admiral Choi Minho of the United Earth Colonial Fleet. To all species listening, know that humanity has found its place among the stars. We offer friendship to those who want peace, and swift destruction to those who choose war." The message was heard on 1,000 worlds, by 100 different species. The age of Krillian dominance was ending, and something far more dangerous had taken its place. The wreckage field around Kepler 442 stretched for millions of kilometers, a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered dreams. Captain Song Hae-won guided her scout ship UES Whisper through the debris with practiced skill, her eyes scanning for anything valuable among the remains of the once mighty Krillian fleet. "Another piece of hull plating, 12 o'clock, reported. Her navigator, Petty Officer Yudamin, looks like it came from one of their heavy cruisers." Song Hae-won nodded and adjusted course. The Whisper was designed for this kind of work, fast, quiet, and packed with the best salvage equipment human engineering could create. Her crew had spent the last 6 hours picking through the battlefield, collecting everything from weapon fragments to intact computer cores. Captain, Technical Specialist Kim Min-jun called out from his workstation, "I've got something big here." The navigation computer from the Krillian flagship is still functional. Most of the data banks are intact. Song Hae-won felt her pulse quicken. Intelligence was more valuable than any weapon or piece of technology. "What can you pull from it?" Kim Min-chun's fingers danced across his console as he cracked the alien encryption. "Star charts, fleet deployments, supply lines, ... and something else. The complete location data for 17 Krillian star systems, including detailed information about their homeworld." "Their homeworld?" Song Hae-won moved to look over his shoulder. "What kind of defenses do they have?" "According to this, it's called Kethera. Massive orbital defense platforms, a fleet of over 500 warships, and some kind of planetary shield generator." "But Captain, that's not the most interesting part." "What is?" "Look at these supply manifests. The Krillian Empire is barely holding together. Half their colonies are in open revolt, their military is spread too thin, and they're running short on the rare minerals needed to power their weapons." On the bridge of the UES Indomitable, Admiral Choi Minho reviewed the intelligence reports flooding in from dozens of scout ships. Each piece of data painted the same picture: the Empire was a house of cards waiting to fall. "Sir," Communications Officer Lee Goon reported, "we're receiving surrender offers from Krillian garrison commanders on 12 different worlds. They're offering to switch sides in exchange for protection from their own government." Admiral Choi Minho studied the tactical display showing human fleets positioned throughout known space. What had started as a desperate exodus from Earth had become something unprecedented, a full-scale galactic conquest. "Signal all fleet commanders," he ordered. "We're not stopping with one system. It's time to show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate humanity." The human war machine rolled forward with unstoppable momentum. Captain Kong Hyjin led Battle Group 7 against the mining world of Vexmar, where Krillian overseers had enslaved 3 different alien species. For 2 centuries, her ships dropped out of hyperspace like avenging angels, their weapons charged and ready. All ships, target the slave processing centers first, she commanded. We're here to liberate, not conquer. The Krillian defense fleet tried to intercept them, but human tactics had evolved far beyond what any alien species could counter. Captain Kong's ships moved in 3 dimensions simultaneously, using gravity wells and asteroid fields as cover while their weapons struck with surgical precision. Within hours, the Krillian garrison had surrendered, and 3 species tasted freedom for the first time in generations. But more importantly, the humans had gained 3 new allies and access to the largest rare metal deposits in the sector. Commander Kextall, one of the few Krillian officers to survive the Battle of Kepler 442, sent a desperate transmission to his homeworld from his damaged cruiser High Command. You must understand, these humans don't fight like any species we've encountered. They adapt faster than we can respond. Every tactic we try, they counter before we can implement it. Our standard formations are useless against them. The response from Kethra was predictably arrogant. Impossible. No primitive species can match Krillian military doctrine. You will return to base for court-martial and execution for cowardice. Kextall stared at the transmission in disbelief. Even now, facing complete defeat, the Empire refused to acknowledge the threat they faced. Captain Nam Do-yoon commanded the U.S. Thunder, a massive battleship that had been built during the journey from Earth using salvaged Krillian technology. Her target was Vex Prime, a fortress world that guarded one of the main approaches to the Krillian homeworld. Engineering. Status on the stealth systems. She called out. Engineer Park Woo-jin checked his readouts. Stealth field is stable, Captain. We're using their own cloaking technology against them. To their sensors, we'll look like empty space until we're right on top of them. The Thunder and her escort ships slipped through the Vex Prime defense perimeter like ghosts. The massive orbital platforms that had protected the world for 1,000 years never detected the approaching human fleet until it was too late. Weapons, fire at will. Captain Nam Do-yoon commanded. The Thunder's main guns spoke with the voice of thunder itself. Fusion beams and particle cannons tore through the alien defenses like paper. The orbital platforms that had seemed so mighty just moments before exploded in brilliant fireballs that lit up the planet's night side. But the real stars of the battle were the fighter pilots. Flight Commander O.J. Hyen led Squadron 12 through the debris field, his pilots weaving between chunks of destroyed stations with inhuman skill. These were the children of the void, born on generation ships, raised in zero gravity, trained from birth to fight in 3 dimensions. Thunder. Squadron, this is Commander O. Target the remaining defense platforms. Let's finish this. His fighters moved like a school of deadly fish, each pilot thinking independently while somehow coordinating perfectly with the others. They had no homeworld to remember, no blue skies to dream of. The stars were their home, and they defended them with a ferocity that terrified their enemies. This is for Earth, O.J. Hyen whispered as his plasma cannons locked onto a Krillian command ship. This is for everyone who didn't make it off our dying world. His shots struck true, and another piece of the Krillian Empire crumbled into space dust across the galaxy. Similar scenes played out as human fleets struck at the heart of alien power. Each victory brought new ally species that had been oppressed by the Krillians for centuries, welcomed their human liberators with joy. The Vekanari masters of biotechnology offered to enhance human soldiers. The Velteran, experts in energy manipulation, shared their secrets of fast communication. Within months, what had been the Krillian Empire became a patchwork of free worlds protected by human fleets. The aliens who had once dismissed humanity as primitive refugees now cowered in their last strongholds, waiting for the inevitable final assault. In the command center of his flagship, Admiral Choi Min-ho watched as the tactical display updated. With each new victory, red markers representing Krillian control turned green as human forces liberated world after world. Sir, reported his aide, Captain Park Soo-bin, we're receiving a transmission from the Krillian homeworld. It appears to be a request for negotiations. Admiral Choi Min-ho smiled grimly. Tell them we'll negotiate after they surrender unconditionally. Humanity tried to find a peaceful home among the stars. They chose to make it a war instead. The final battle for the Krillian homeworld was about to begin, and this time there would be no retreat, no mercy. And no doubt about who ruled the galaxy. The crystal spires of Kethera had stood for 10,000 years, reaching toward the stars like prayers made of living stone. The Krillian homeworld was a monument to alien ambition, with floating cities that drifted between the towers and orbital rings that caught the light of 3 suns. For 5 centuries, no enemy had dared approach this sacred world. Now the sky burned with the light of 1,000 human warships. Emperor Vextal stood before the massive windows of his throne room, his forearms trembling as he watched his mighty orbital defenses crumble like sandcastles. The defense platforms that had protected Kethera since before humans had discovered fire were being torn apart by weapons that defied everything the Empire understood about warfare. Your Majesty, his military advisor, General Vecma, whispered through chattering teeth, the outer defense ring has fallen. The humans have broken through the planetary shield. They're landing troops on the surface. How many ships do they have? Emperor Vextal demanded, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. We don't know, Majesty. Our long-range scouts report human colonies in star systems we've never even heard of. They're not expanding from one point like a normal species. They're everywhere, in every direction, like they've been planning this for generations. The Emperor's primary eyes focused on the tactical displays while his secondary eyes watched the news feeds from across his crumbling empire. World after world was falling to human forces, and worse, many planets were surrendering without a fight. The species his people had oppressed for centuries were welcoming the humans as liberators. Admiral Yoon Seo-jun stood on the bridge of the U.S. Vengeance, watching the ancient alien homeworld grow larger on his screens. At 58 years old, he was one of the few humans who had been born on Earth, though he barely remembered the blue skies of humanity's birth world. Now he commanded the largest fleet in human history, over 1,500 ships assembled from every corner of the galaxy. Admiral, reported Captain Kim Jae-hoon from the tactical station, all fleet groups are in position. The Krillian orbital defenses are down to 30% strength. We're ready for the final assault. Yoon Seo-jun nodded grimly. Around him, officers whose grandparents had fled a dying Earth in desperate refugee ships, prepared to claim the ultimate victory among the stars. These were the children and grandchildren of people who had once begged for mercy from the very aliens they were now conquering. Open channels to all ships, he ordered. The communication system crackled to life, connecting him to hundreds of ship captains across the fleet. He could see their faces on the screens, young and old, men and women, all united by the fire of human determination. Warriors of humanity, he said quietly. Today we finish what they started when they decided to underestimate us. Our ancestors left Earth as refugees, but we return to the stars as conquerors. Today, we show the galaxy what it means to anger the human race. The response was immediate and thunderous. Across the fleet, 1,500 ships opened fire simultaneously. The sky above Kethera became a storm of plasma beams, fusion torpedoes, and kinetic projectiles. The remaining Krillian defenses tried to respond, but human weapons had evolved far beyond anything the aliens could counter. Captain Hong Soo-bin led the first wave of dropships toward the planet's surface. Her marines were no longer the same species that had left Earth decades ago. Using captured alien biotechnology, they had enhanced themselves for war. Their reflexes were faster than any natural human, their strength augmented by mechanical implants, their endurance pushed beyond mortal limits. Touchdown in 30 seconds. She called out to her troops. Remember, we're here to capture their leadership, not massacre civilians. But anyone who points a weapon at us becomes a legitimate target. The dropships screamed through Kethera's atmosphere, their hulls glowing white-hot from friction. Anti-aircraft fire reached up to greet them, but human point defense systems swatted the incoming projectiles aside like annoying insects. Hong Soo-bin's ship slammed into the landing pad outside the Imperial Palace, her marines pouring out before the engines had even stopped spinning. They moved through the alien architecture like a force of nature, their enhanced bodies allowing them to leap between buildings and climb vertical walls with ease. The Krillian palace guards tried to make a stand, but their weapons were designed for ceremony, not warfare. Human plasma rifles cut through their ornate armor like it was made of paper. Within minutes, the outer defenses had fallen. Breaching the throne room now, Hong Soo-bin reported into her communicator as her team planted explosive charges on the massive doors. Resistance is minimal. I think they're in shock. The doors exploded inward in a shower of crystal fragments. Hong Soo-bin and her marines poured through the breach, their weapons trained on the throne at the far end of the chamber. Emperor Vextol stood alone beside his throne, his military advisors having fled or been killed in the fighting. The alien monarch who had ruled 17 star systems looked small and fragile without his armies to protect him. "Your Majesty," Hong Subin said in fluent Krillian, her voice amplified by her helmet speakers. "I am Captain Hong Subin of the United Earth Marine Corps. You are hereby ordered to surrender yourself and your remaining forces." The Emperor's forearms fell to his sides in defeat. "You were supposed to be refugees," he whispered in broken standard. "Desperate, frightened refugees fleeing a dying world. How did you become this?" Hong Subin removed her helmet, revealing a face that was both young and ancient, marked by years of war among the stars. "We were refugees, Your Majesty, but you and your people made a terrible mistake. You thought our desperation made us weak. Instead, it made us dangerous." She gestured to her Marines, who began securing the chamber. "When you have nothing left to lose, you become capable of anything. When you've already lost your home, you'll fight twice as hard for your new one. And when you've been dismissed as primitives, you'll prove just how wrong that assumption was." Across the galaxy, the news of the Emperor's capture spread faster than light itself. The Krillian Empire, which had dominated 17 star systems for over a millennium, had fallen to a species they had dismissed as primitive refugees. Shockwaves rippled through every alien civilization, forcing them to recalculate everything they thought they knew about humanity. Commander Park Woojin, newly appointed as the first human governor of Kethera, stood in the same throne room where emperors had once ruled. He had been born on a generation ship, raised in the void between stars, and now he governed a world that orbited alien suns. "Open a channel to all remaining Krillian fleets," he ordered his communications officer. The transmission went out across the galaxy, reaching every corner of what had once been an empire. Park Woojin's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. "To any Krillian commander still listening, this is Governor Park Woojin of the Terran Colonial Administration. Your emperor has surrendered. Your homeworld is under human control. Your empire is finished. You have two choices: surrender and live as citizens of the new order, or continue fighting and share the fate of your military. Choose wisely." The responses came within hours. Fleet after fleet, world after world, the remaining Krillian forces laid down their weapons. Some chose exile, fleeing to the outer rim of the galaxy. Others accepted human rule, grateful for the chance to live in a system that valued competence over fear. But humanity's expansion didn't stop with the fall of the Krillian Empire. The human diaspora continued to spread, each colony adapting to its unique environment, each fleet learning from the others. They encountered new species, some hostile, some friendly, all forced to acknowledge that the galaxy had a new dominant power. The Veteran Masters of Energy Manipulation offered an alliance after witnessing human tactical flexibility. The Zorkani, a warrior race that respected strength above all else, requested permission to serve in human fleets. The Vekanari, with their biotechnology, sought to learn from human adaptability. What had begun as a desperate exodus from a dying world had become something the galaxy had never seen before, species that grew stronger with every challenge, more dangerous with every defeat, more united with every victory. In the depths of space, new generation ships continued their journey toward distant stars, carrying the next wave of human expansion. But now they traveled not as refugees, but as the advance guard of a civilization that had learned to turn its greatest weakness into its greatest strength. The aliens had thought they were facing refugees fleeing a dying world. They had been facing the future itself, the end.